Win big in 2025 with Team Sync from RotoBaller. Import your fantasy teams and sync your leagues. Get customized tools and tailored advice for your specific rosters and scoring settings, including live recommendations from the live draft assistant, free agent finder, and lineup optimizer. Sync an unlimited amount of NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL fantasy teams from all of the major fantasy platforms. Get a discount for any premium pass using my promo code Knuckler. Just visit rotoballer.com/radio and start rotoballing like a boss. This podcast is also brought to you by Parlay Play Fantasy Sports. Use my referral code RotoBrady. Get that sweet, sweet deposit bonus. They're coming to they're bringing paid contests to a state near you. They're giving out boosts and bonuses, slashing lines all day long. Hop in those player prop DFS contests. It's a real fun platform over there. And what is up, everybody? This is Brady Grove bringing you another interlude episode of RotoBaller's official MMA podcast. Tap that. And so this week, we are back to UFC action off the 1 week hiatus. Follow the podcast at Tap That MMA Podcast on YouTube and Spotify. Looking for my MMA DFS Values Picks article that comes out Friday mornings through RotoBaller. And come out to the RotoBaller MMA Discord on fight days. Let's talk about what you're doing DFS-wise and betting-wise for all those cards. And with me tonight,
Drake quarterback Luke Bailey had himself a day in Saturday's 52-21 win over St. Thomas, and he's been named the FedEx Ground FCS National Offensive Player of the Week.
He is the first signee in Kentucky Barrels history. Look at me tonight. I got my Kentucky Barrels shirt on. He was a quarterback at Drake University. Give it up for Luke Bailey. Luke, how you doing tonight? Thank you so much for being here.
I'm doing great. I love the shirt. I gotta get some of that merch, man. I really like it.
I got it at the press conference, which was a fun, introductory thing. And like, first and foremost, the still pinned at the top of your Twitter account, it says, thank you, Drake. I'll be entering the transfer portal as a grad transfer with 1 year of eligibility pending. So what ended up being the situation with that?
Yeah, so actually right after the season, I was looking to get one more year. I played in 6 plays over my red shirt. So I played in like 5 games. One of those games, it was 6 plays. So I was actually trying to get a little waiver from the NCAA just to see if I can get one more year and see what opportunities were out there. I had a lot of interest, so I was hoping I can get that, but unfortunately, it did not come through. Northwestern and Duke were 2 options I could have went, but
Oh,
uh,
man.
yeah.
Well, because just a handful of months later, you end up finding your first professional opportunity. And like, it must have been, was it like a hard adjustment to make of like, all right, this isn't happening now. I got to like find a route somewhere else.
Yeah, it was a tough area to be in because you're looking to do pro days. Also to get an agent, once you get an agent, your eligibility's gone. So I was in a weird spot where I really want to do these pro days, and I was able to do Northwestern's pro day, and Northern Iowa's pro day as well. But I didn't have an agent because once I got my agent, I wouldn't have eligibility, and I was still hoping to get that waiver. So I was kind of like playing both fields because I really didn't know what my next steps were going to be. And then once, the NCAA let me know that, it's not possible, then I kind of like flipped the switch and I was like, all right, well, now that we're a little later in the process, what professional opportunities are there to do? And then, I was able to get my agent and everything, and it all worked out. Everything happens for a reason.
Well, for sure. I mean, that long term could very well end up being the better thing for you. Like it, because you weren't able to get that last year at like a school where maybe you would have gotten a little bit more exposure, being able to work on some aspects of your game against other professionals could very well end up being a good thing.
Oh, right. Yeah. There's so many leagues out there, and, at the end of the day, your film shows what you can do, and if you're good enough, people find you. So, whatever opportunity I was given, I was thankful for. So I was, really happy to be part of the Kentucky Barrels organization for sure.
And before we get to your signing with the Kentucky Barrels, so I mean, you were at Drake from 2021 to 2024. This is
Yeah.
an era where nobody stays at any school for that long. So you must have really enjoyed, the environment and what was going on football wise there in Des Moines.
Right. I really liked where I was. Great group of guys. My class was the COVID class, so we kind of came in at a weird time, but it brought us closer together. And so a lot of us stayed till we were redshirt seniors, and nobody really left, and I think that contributed to our overall success too. And it was just, I love the area, I love the place I was at, and I think there's something to say where, if you transfer, sometimes the grass isn't always greener. And so if you like where you are, and you're enjoying it and you're winning, most of all, and I loved it.
It does seem like there's a lot of people. Obviously, there's a ton of really good reasons to transfer. You want an opportunity at a different time. The coach leaves. There's it's not the right chemistry. There's a bunch of reasons to transfer, but it does seem like in this day and age, a lot of people outside of even the money are just kind of like transferring to transfer a lot of the time because you can.
Oh yeah, it's like a free agency at this point. I just I feel like, you don't really see as many guys stay to school when they're freshmen to seniors. And I think it hurts some of these schools because you can't really build that culture aspect. And so I think you're seeing less and less of that where guys are like, what's in it for me? Whereas, football is a team game. And I feel like, once you get a school where they're able to retain their talent and guys don't want to leave, I think they can be very successful because of that. But yeah, no, transfer portal, it's wild these days. And that's why I wanted to try it my last year, why not? And a lot of my friends are graduating, so I thought, I should give it a shot. But
It is like because everybody talks about how, the current state of college sports, how it ruins like, program chemistry over time. But if you are a program that is able to build that culture and chemistry, I think it gives you a significant advantage against those who are just throwing money at people.
right, yeah, if you can get the talent and build the culture, I think that's where you see these really good teams like Ohio State and some of these other guys where they're able to, consistently have that winning success.
Now, in your final season at Drake, the statistics as far as like what you accumulated, very similar to your season in 2023. You had 2,635 passing yards, 16 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. But your last season at Drake, 255 completions out of 386 attempts. This was an almost 12% bump in your completion percentage from 2023. So, what aspects of your game were you working on to accomplish that goal of, improving your accuracy exponentially?
Right. I think it's not being greedy. As a quarterback, you want to go for that big play sometimes, even when it's not there. And I was definitely, one that wanted to air it out more. But it's learning the game, becoming more of a veteran. I was older, I had more experience within the offense. Our offense, I think our scheme was better. And so a lot of these easier completions where, you could throw a quick out and we can get more yards than if you were to launch it deep and it's like a 25% completion there, So I think just being a part of the offense and being more of a veteran in that aspect, really helped me to get more completions and be more minded on those little things.
It's interesting that you say that because when I watch your highlight reels, the few things that jump out are one, you think well on your feet. Like whenever you're in a scramble situation, like you're still looking for a play to make, and you find people down the field. You are like definitely a gutsy quarterback. You like do take some of those chances and end up with some pretty sick highlights because of it. And you do like to go downfield. So it is interesting that you brought up those points as far as your accuracy goes because your highlights, some of those things are the things that you do on the run are fantastic.
Yeah. No, I feel like that's a big part of my game. I like to keep my eyes down the field when I get out of the pocket. Similar to Mahomes and Rodgers, that style. I like to make plays on my feet, and I think there's not always a play there to be made in the pocket. So there's times where the quarterback needs to get out of the pocket and make those throws. And there's times where I feel more comfortable throwing on the run, and I think that's an edge you might be able to have over some guys where they might not be as comfortable. But yeah, definitely I tried to in my highlights show some more of those spark plays. Um, but yeah, my last year I was definitely able to hit more of those check downs, but still I still had some of those long throws and some of those plays on the run. So
It was one too. I think it was like that quarterback testimonial you did, like from that program or whatever that you did. But it was
I,
they like you had a pass where you were on the run going the opposite way and like threaded the needle between two defenders in the end zone. It was like, damn, like he like keeps a cool head when he's on the run, like still looking for these plays.
yeah, and I think there's something to be said about that because then, if you're a quarterback that only looks to run in that situation or only looks to pass, it can give the defense an advantage. So if you're looking kind of both ways, like, hey, can I run this? Can I, keep my eyes down the field and maybe throw this? It keeps the defense on their toes. And yeah, in those situations, man, I love to get out of the pocket. And, it gives the defense more time to try to cover, and I think it makes it more difficult. So I always, liked being in those situations. And yeah, I think that one might have been Eastern Washington. We were able to knock them out in overtime. So that was one of my favorite plays.
Since you brought it up, I'll transition to this next. Eastern Washington. One, that was a huge win for you guys.
Yeah.
In an overtime thriller. I know that was one that meant a lot to Drake. Now, that was at Eastern Washington. Now, Luke, I love when a school thinks outside the box in terms of field color. I love the turf. I love the Smurf turf. Eastern Washington, folks, if you don't know, it is an infrared red field. And the way eyeballs work, I'm no doctor, but when you stare at something red for a long time, it starts to look all green and stuff and kind of mess with your cones and rods. What was it like playing them on that field? Is it as disorienting as it looks on TV?
You know what? When we watched it on films, when we were preparing for the game, seeing the red, I'm like, man, it is weird. From that angle, it is weird, and especially if they wear red jerseys, or like, is this gonna affect me, when I'm playing? But once I was on the field, I really didn't have a problem. You don't really think much of it. But I remember my parents asking, like, "Yeah, was that a big deal?" And I was like, I almost forgot that it was a red field. But no, for sure, from the angle on television and the angle of watching film, it is a little different. But once you're on there, I don't think it has too much of an effect.
And that's always kind of what I've figured because, like, when you're watching on TV, you're just staring down bird's
Right,
eye at like this big red block. I imagine on the field, most of what you're actually seeing as you're looking up and everything is not red stuff.
right,
So,
right. Yes.
yeah, that was a massive win for you all. And now, like at the end of 2024, when you weren't exactly sure what was going to end up happening in 2025, what were some of your aspects of your game now at that point that it's like, all right, now like in between whatever happens, I'm looking to work on this.
Yeah, I think being able to continually work on protections and different coverages, IDing different fronts, I think that's an aspect of the game that everyone can improve on. And for me, I just love throwing the ball. But that's also a big part of playing quarterback. And there was a time where we had to identify blitzes and had to switch protections to the quarterback, and I was good at it. You can always be better. So I think that was kind of a big thing that I was looking at is how can I improve with identifying these things just to make the game even faster in my head. So
Now, back on September 1st, it was announced that you were going to be the first ever signee of the Kentucky Barrels. Very
uh,
exciting. I think that this is a very good location for arena football. I think
yeah,
that, A1, AF1 has like certainly done a lot of like businessy things the right way, over the last year, maybe as opposed to when, the reboot started. Having Jeff Fisher in charge is always a good idea. He's made some great decisions since he's, stepped into a greater leadership role within the league. Now, what led to you in ending up being the first Kentucky Barrels signee in the franchise's history?
Right. So, big thanks to my agents on that one. But I definitely, I had interest here and there from a lot of those arena teams. Once I got signed with my agent, and realized that I didn't have any eligibility left in college. And my agent called me and she was like, "Hey, there's a team that's really interested in you. Coach Walker is a winning coach, and they're a new team. And so once they let me know about that, I was like, yeah, no, I'm all for it. And I think a couple days after, I was able to sign with them. So it kind of happened fairly fast. And we were just looking for a team, and they were very interested. So it's nice to be wanted, and it's nice to be part of a new team like that because I feel like there's a lot of buzz around it, and it's a great area for sure.
Well, and it's an interesting thing, like being like signed as the first player, and you're a quarterback for a new team. Where I think like the fan base has a really good chance of like really getting behind that team. Is like, damn, really quickly you get a chance to really ingratiate yourself with a fan base, like being like that fresh on a new and exciting thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the quarterback position already comes with a lot of I guess I could say pressure, but there's a lot the quarterback has to do. And I think being able to kind of build your team around a quarterback signee or build a fan base around that, I think is a great idea by the organization. And I just hope to lead them in the right direction.
And I mean, you look at what like AF1 has done for careers of guys like, Tyler Kolka, even just recently, how well he played with the Nashville Cats and the whole Kolka mania thing that, came up. And he's been on this show before. Love that guy. So, like, having kind of a wave of momentum behind you like that from a good season in the AF1 can be a big deal. And this is something I'm always fascinated by. I'm always fascinated by like the way, like the ways that these arena football teams and leagues run the business part, because because unfortunately it's always been such a fleeting thing, like it's been hard to do. So like when you sign to be a player for the Kentucky Barrels, what kind of life changes do you have to make as far as like, all right, like I'm gonna be like living here for some period of time, like I gotta do this, I gotta find this to do, I gotta cancel this, like what kinds of things do you already have to start thinking about of getting ready to play, once the season starts?
Right. I feel like you get acclimated in certain environments. And so I feel like you got to get used to be living in just a different city. I'm in Illinois currently, but just to know, you're going to be playing professional football and being in a nice area, I feel like you definitely have to just get adjusted to that part. There's definitely, right now I'm working out a lot. Eating a lot, making sure I'm staying healthy, throwing a lot. And, I have a good friend with me that's kind of in a similar situation where we've been, doing this together. And I think you get in these habits and you got to learn that, these habits aren't forever and you got to be able to adjust and be willing to move locations. Cause, in professional football, guys move around a lot. And so I think just getting used to that part and not getting too acclimated where you're at because it can change very fast.
Now, obviously, your entire life you have played outdoor American football. And now you're going to be playing arena football under, different rule sets, different field dimensions, which I'm sure for a guy like you has got to be the biggest adjustment is like the field size, like figuring out where your eyes like need to be going all the time. So, are these things that you start to work on now as like, all right, like this is going to be because the goal is eventually to get back to also playing like outdoor football under regular dimensions. So What kinds of things are you thinking about as far as preparing for the arena format, or is it really just like I'll learn on the job kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. For me, the best way to learn is to be thrown in there and you see it and you actually do it. But then, there is a part where you do have to prepare for it. So yeah, obviously it's a smaller field. So that means, quicker reads. You got to know where you're going with in terms of the ball. Um, quick release and making sure you realize, there's sometimes I want to get out of the pocket, but you realize it's much shorter and you might not have as much room to work with. So being smart in those areas. And I also think, talking with guys that have been there before, um, talking with other quarterbacks that have had a lot of experience in the Arena League and just get, some wisdom from them, some ideas from them, I think is always good. So, think it's a little bit of both. Once you're thrown in there, you really get the feel, but there's also a part where you do have to take those things into consideration and prepare a little bit.
Now, what do you think of are your aspects like of your game that you think will translate well to the arena game?
Right. Well, first off, I love that it's a lot of passing. I think any quarterback will love that. But Um, I think different arm angles. For me, I feel comfortable throwing at any arm slot, and I think that's important in the Arena League just because you got to get the ball out quick. And if there's a guy in your face, which can happen very, very fast, to be able to throw it without even thinking about it. And I think that's a big part of my game where, I don't mind throwing on the run. I don't mind, being hit and kind of trying to throw around a guy, So I think a lot of those things can translate very well to the Arena League.
Yeah, that was it's something that obviously jumps out like watching any tape on you is like the arm angles that you do throw at when necessary are like crazy, and it's not something that a lot of people can do, but it does allow you that extra freedom of you can go on the run and like see what's available to you.
Right. And sometimes the defense isn't expecting it. There's a guy that he thinks he's going to bat a ball or he thinks he's going to be able to get you or you're going to throw it away and you kind of just throw it around him. And, I had a lot of opportunities in college where I was able to, I don't know if I would surprise guys, but, there's definitely throws there that not everybody can make. And I think it just gives you an edge over the competition.
So ultimately, Luke, what can fans of the Kentucky Barrels and the great people of Highland Heights, Kentucky, where Northern Kentucky University is, where the Barrels will be playing, what can they expect to see from you on the field in 2026?
Right. Well, I think winning is the biggest thing. Where I've been at Drake, we won. Just being in high school, we won, and I think they're going to get a guy who's passionate, a leader that looks forward to playing football and to leading teams and to winning. So I think just that, down to earth a little bit. There's times where I get fired up on the field, but there's also times where I can be laid back. And I think, all that immense together to just leading a team to victory.
Folks, this has been another interlude episode of RotoBallers official MMA podcast, Tap That. We were here tonight with Luke Bailey, the first signee in the history of the Kentucky Barrels. Luke, thank you so much for being here tonight, man. If there is anything you want to say or anybody you want to shout out, the floor is yours.
Oh yeah, just shout out to Drake and my family. I think a lot of my buddies at Drake, they were able to help me they were able to help put me in this situation, and then my family just for being supportive of me. Just exploring professional opportunities. There's never a doubt in their minds. So just thank you everybody for the support, and I thank you for having me on this podcast.
Oh, well, of course. And folks, look out for Luke Bailey and what's going to happen in this upcoming AF1 season. Thank you so much for listening. Have yourselves a great week and peace.